Thank you for staying until the very end, until the very last presentation. We're all tired, but we have lots of expectations. We want to listen to a speaker's presentation. Thank you for inviting me to moderate our discussion with Victor and Rolando, who will describe the current situation of the beef livestock market specifically, and then poultry and pigs. And Rolando will give us an updated overview of the big market. They will also share with us their point of view about where we are heading and where we should head. So not to take too much time off the agenda, I will start by introducing them. Victor Tonelli has a degree in agricultural sciences. He's a livestock farmer from General Guido in the province of Buenos Aires. He is very much related to the public and the private sector especially. He is a member of the Barbichando Foundation, the Beef Commission of the Argentinian Royal Society, the group of farmers from the south, the commission created by the current administration. He's a member of the Argentinian Table of Sustainable Beef, advisor to WWF on environmental traceability, and carbon calculator at the site level. He used to work for Cabañeras Lilas, the first company to sell beef with their private brand. He chaired the Association of Beef Industries twice. He, of course, has made several presentations all over the world. On the other hand, Rolando González will be with us. He's the full professor of the National Rosario University. He has a master's degree in agricultural business, and he is an agricultural economist. Victor, the floor is yours. Thank you, Dieguito. I call him Little Diego or Dieguito because everyone who's younger than 50 is very young to me. Thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you, Aapresid, for remembering that livestock exists. I'm joking, but 20 years ago when I was invited to go to Rosario to talk about livestock, I have to admit I was scared because at the time, if the gate was open and the cows would get into the agricultural side, that would be terrible. The goal of this presentation is to describe the current scenario where the business takes place. Then we will see the international overview to see what's happening in the world, what opportunities and challenges we are facing. We will then go to Argentina to see where we are standing, and especially at the end, I will emphasize what we have to do to grow competitively and what are the topics on the agenda today, those topics that we will have to get involved with. First of all, 2024 starts with two major events. The first one is that rainfall came back. We have a forage supply with very good expectations, and that implied leaving the immediate previous cycle where we lost over 2.5 million heads, plus all the losses that imply process interruptions such as cow-calf operations and stocking, and the low pregnancy rates that we eventually had as a result of that drought. Obviously, at the time, there was also a change in public policies where the first measure was to do away with all restrictions to exports, and this gave the livestock sector back a horizon of foreseeability, and we hope we will keep on this way, in that we'll not find black swans we have been having for too long a time. Now, with the residual effect of the drop in cow-calf operations and stocking this year, the reduction will be 10% below the supply we had last year. And the other topics I mentioned, the fact that there are no restrictions on imports, added to reduced purchasing power in this change of public policies where consumers and citizens are still waiting to see the effect. I hope it will get before we get tired, but we are on our way. But exports have grown. The supply, as I was saying, dropped by 10%, but in spite of this, and favoring this new scenario of exports, and this week, we learned about the resolution that confirmed what the president had announced about zero withholdings for cow exports and a 25% reduction for the other categories, where clearly exports have become protagonists, and this has not ever happened. This year, it has exceeded 30% of the final destination of the whole available supply after slaughter. This is important and will probably have an impact on the abundant supply in the second semester. Considering the good prices of grains and of food to be transformed into, of feed to be transformed into beef, and this has made the barns today, these are recent data by Senasa, to have almost 100,000 more heads enclosed than what we had during the same period last year, which was already a large number. So I would say that we are almost at 2.1 million heads for all feedlots registered with Senasa. Add to this all the other feedlots that are not registered, or the small ones, and you will find that right now we already have in the finishing stage a large number of animals that will be going to slaughter in the next few months. Diego always wants to know how much the calves will cost next week, well, or earlier if possible. I don't know about that, but it's clear that everything that is slaughtering for the internal market, based on the fact that the purchasing power has dropped, well, I do not see too many price recovery opportunities, at least as compared to what we used to have. Undoubtedly, the macroeconomy is showing a significant drop of inflation. We're seeing this in terms of access to loans, and especially the rates that seem to be a dream many months ago. And of course, there is still a lot of room for improvement. The productive sectors are still waiting for this. At the international level, I would say that the demand has been amazing. We will hit a new record this year in terms of marketing of beef from any origin to any destination, so you cannot say that there is a demand problem. What we do see is a plateau in prices due to the fact that the international economy has been affected by those black swans. They started with the COVID, and then when it seemed that we were going to recover thanks to vaccines and science, we had the Russia-Ukraine war, and when this seemed to be about to become more quiet, we had the Gaza problems and other political problems that prevent an important economic recovery. You may have heard about the problems in Japan, the supposed drop in the U.S. activity, etc. Sooner or later, all of these problems will affect this business and any business in the world. Cattle breeding will have to face from here onwards new demands, new regulations, new requirements for the beef product, which is so good and so good from a nutritional point of view, will get to consumers. Consumers will need as much information as possible, or at least they need the information to be able to define whether the process used to prepare that food follows consumers' principles from an animal welfare or ethical point of view. I will stop here. I will say a bit more about this topic at the end, but the demand all over the world and the more developed markets from a social and cultural point of view present a new challenge to us. Now that I've learned to manage my cow, I also have to manage the soil and emissions and carbon footprint and so on and so forth. And the answer is yes, we will have to do this. And finally, last but not least, there is an agenda that the government has already communicated to companies, which I think is going the right way. But we will see this on my last slide, and we can't discuss this topic. To sum up what has happened with beef in Argentina, Rolando, we can discuss this later on, even though we've already discussed part of this topic. In Argentina, except for this last year when it dropped a little bit because of the drought, but in general terms, the total supply per inhabitant per year of beef has grown. Consumption has gone from less than 100 to 115 kilos per inhabitant a year in 25 years. It's a very significant growth, but you can see that the blue lines that represent beef are going down, while poultry, the red lines, and pig, the yellow bars, have grown significantly, compensating the drop in the supply/consumption of beef. Pig meat has almost doubled the figures in 25 years. Poultry has almost doubled. It went from 25 to 48, and beef, which was in 67 initially, has gone down to 45. It may recover a little bit next year, but if we calculate a 10-year long projection forecast, we will see that there will be a slow recovery. And this shows that, well, initially, my first comment is wait and see the internal consumption of beef going down, and that consumption will be replaced by the other types of meat. This is what has happened in the world over the last 10 years, starting on June 2014, and the last month surveyed was June 2024, so this is 10 years fully. You can see that the price is taken down to 100. If we compare the data on June 2014, you will see that poultry and pig, red and pink curves, will see that those meats, intensive production meat, anticipate what they think might be the demand. And in the case of poultry, this is a good example, and I will not turn red because ladies will understand that I'm being literal. I love it when Roberto Dominic, the president of Poultry Association, says when we get the information that there will be a supply excess so that prices will not go down, we start breaking eggs. And this is literal. They reduce the future supply, adjusting supply and demand so as not to get into profitability crisis. Now, the red curve is beef. What you will see initially is that it stayed throughout the decade above the values that we had when we started this analysis, with some ups and downs, with some signs on those ups, which are those black swans that had an impact on the business. But if you take a look at the trend, the dotted line, you will see that the trend for beef shows price increase that is more significant than the other types of meat. And this is basically due to the fact that demand growth was faster than the capacity to adjust the supply. So that I would say, and I challenge Rolando to say the same thing about pigs, that we are almost we have an ideal business with demand and prices increase, with some ups and downs. Obviously, nothing is perfect, but that is a trend. And I'd like to say that those signs, the first one is African pig fever, COVID, and the vaccine that activates consumption, and then the war that again affects the prices, take them down until we see a recovery almost a year later. Well, into 2023, we see oil prices going up again, and you can see that over the last few months, let's say the last quarter this year, in general terms, international prices for the three types of meat have shown an interesting recovery. Well, as I've already said, I still have to tell you what happened with that Aconcagua mountain we see on the orange line. Is the avian flu that affected the prices of that kind of meat. Now, this is the international market. I consider 20 years. Initially, I thought about talking about 20 years, but we see that the global market has doubled over the last 20 years, and this is something unbelievable. Except for the new AgTech or the new products, I don't think any other product as mature as beef can show this spectacular growth in volume, which is related to the demand. And when you take a look at the columns, at the bars, you will see that almost all of this growth comes from Asia. You can see the amazing growth, but if you take a look at the orange or yellow bar, you see that almost all of the growth is due to or comes from Asia. And when you mention Asia, you immediately think of China. And there's something very interesting here, which is this chart. China, northeast, well, this line you see here, you can see that China is obviously very important. China didn't exist 15 years ago in the beef or meat exporting country, and today it accounts for 32% of the whole international beef market. But China accounts for 40% or 43%. The rest is amazing markets which have grown dramatically, to which Argentina does not have or has very little access or a small share in their market. You can see this as the empty glass, I usually see the half full glass. So I see in this extraordinary growth outlook where almost 60%, where we are not present in that 60%, but I see that it's an extraordinary growth opportunity looking forward.
I wanted to show you this slide that is intended for the following. The cold storage plants tells us that the market is not doing well, that the price is low. The world is almost divided in two commercial circuits. This it's dairy definitions, but the circuit, the commerce secret of countries that allow foot and mouth disease-free cows, or those that allows you to import although you put a vaccine. This does not sound very well, but the market has segmented this in this way, not because the entry is denied, but also because this has been protected with very high tariffs for those who are not usual suppliers or vendors. U.S. and Australia supply these markets, which can call without vaccination. China represents less than 20% of the volume they'll sell. Practically more than 50% that what they sell goes precisely to these countries: Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, etc., Saudi Arabia, Emirates, etc., that are shaded yellow here. And this small one is green, which represents U.S. 50% of what they sell goes to markets to where we don't have any access. The NAFTA, where U.S. participates and Australia has tariff-free 400 tons. The kilos that goes after 20,000 tons, we have to pay 22.4% of tariff when our goods are placed in the American market. Against the market where we participate in and where we compete with Brazil. Brazil is a leading exporter. It's growing all the time, and it has a cost scheme. I would like to understand it, but really they have very low tariffs, and they put a cap to the values that we can offer, and we are talking about similar products. Brazil, 50% is China, and Argentina, 72%, but we are above 70%. See how much we sell to Southeast Asia. Brazil, 15%. We, nothing, 4%. So we are not where they are, and they are not where we are. The difference is they sell the ton to U.S. almost $9,000, almost $7,000 to Australia, and we only $4,000. Looking into the future, first we have to wonder, can we grow? Yes, we can. But what can I do to grow competitively and enter the same market these people are, that they are winning a lot of money, and we do our best. We try our best. So keep this, because I will make a specific comment about this. A couple of comments to show the typical example of these two markets. China has never stopped growing in the past 8 years. It's continuously growing. The green line is the prices. Volumes continue growing, always beating records all the time. And now we are in $4,700. So Argentina is showing signs of recovery. There are several months ahead of us. And probably in 3 months' time, we probably will be touching an average of 5,100 or 500 and 200, which is significant because 80% of what we export to China is cow from the butchers. I mean, what we reject from our breeding system goes to China. So they don't pay for what we sell, what we send. And I included Philippines because that was the first chart I found that is in the other circuit where the volume goes up and prices goes up. And this time, the difference that we need to understand when we develop a strategy or when we plan or when we put more effort or investments or more commitment, we need to go where we receive more money and where we have higher demand. When I talk about challenges and opportunities, this is the disruption, the disruptive point. Argentina will not consume more than 45 kilos in 10 years' times. Probably this year they consume that because of drought last year. In 2 years, probably 47 kilos. But in 10 years' times, the 10 more kilos, 10 kilos, probably the poultry will have to give way, but the rest have to be given by us. Probably 2.2 million tons will be enough. Today we are producing 3.2 million tons. Probably we have in excess 900,000 tons. The question is, where are we going to put our effort in? Are we going to have a lighter production to compete with a higher price with poultry, or are we going to work to develop these higher value and higher volume market? I put the question on you. I know what the answer is to that, but we need to consider this. Things do not always go along the same road. Sometimes you have the highway, you have the possibility to go to the side road, but I prefer to go to the highway. You run risk because you have the police controlling. If Argentina, and this is an excellent work that has been done by José Lisi Acrea, if Argentina had the efficiency levels Australia has, that is extraction of stock of Argentina today 27, we can go up to 33% instead of taking 36% of the stock. We took 33 for slaughtering. We had the weaning rate, which is 48% in Australia, here 66%. We are going up. And if we would slaughter with a weight of 265 kilos, it's not something difficult. Uruguay is slaughtering with 262. If some of you can explain to me in what are the Australians better than we are beyond culture and political reason, in terms of production, I can't understand it. If that happened, we could increase production by 50%. We could double exports, and we could add value in markets that are willing to pay. We would also double the value of whatever we produce. Today we produce $20 billion. This is what we produce in livestock, but we could produce 40 million. So the foreign debt is paid by livestock production. So we need to think big. Not to think old, to think big. The world is huge. The world wants meat, and the people who started to eat meat want more meat. And the vegans, who's going to feed the world with meat? We have to charge for that. And are they going to pay what we require? Yes, they will. They have to work hard. We have to work for that. If in 2 or 3 years' time, the new administration closes again imports and starts to control maximum weight or whatever regulation they think of, we are done. We need to have laws related to livestock that can give us the possibility of the long term. It's something that needs the productive cycle, but that does not come from politics. It comes from us. The main focus has to be on exports, not because I'm trying to impact on domestic consumption. I've already supplied domestic consumption. I need to continue growing. I need to feed more people. That's why we need to go clearly to export. So those who rejected the base law initially, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking, this is my gut feeling. We vote, we pay the taxes. We need to be strict here. We can't accept that rules change every 3 months. Another policy is going out to the world. It was a good business to close exports, and so we are able to eat cheap meat. But if we post on ourselves the challenges of going out to the world, we have to go out to the world with all our strength, and we have to negotiate quotas, and we have to negotiate tariffs, and we have to give something in exchange. We cannot beg things. We, in international negotiations, we have to go with a suitcase, leave the suitcase there, and you have to bring another suitcase. To eliminate any kind of restrictions, that's obvious, but there's something, and we talk a lot in our meetings. We need to be more transparent about the weight of beef. Today we have 70%, the equation to is 70% beef, 30 poultry, 0 pork. We have to do this because was the home survey from 2003. That was 21 years ago when we had 65, 70 kilos of meat. These are the things that should, or with which we have to be concerned. We have to be sincere. If we want more value, we have to sell quality. And if we want to sell more quality, we have to stimulate this. And to stimulate this, we need to have a calculator, typifying device, so that we can tell that this meat is better than this one, more eye round, more welter. But now we are a bag of potatoes without a grade. This is another topic because the grading is done after the slaughter. You already received the money for your cows. And also all the data that we gave, whatever data we give, have to be serious. You cannot lie. We cannot say we are positive carbon. We are not positive carbon. We have to measure that. This marketing stories won't work in the world. To be serious, to generate trust, and to be transparent. Individual traceability. If somebody in this great meeting does not agree with traceability, I can understand, but let me explain to you why without individual traceability we are going nowhere. Because we won't be credible, and because what we do today only helps to enter Europe, but it does not help to have carbon footprint or whatever footprint we need to submit. We need to give serious response with individual traceability and electronic traceability. Sanitary, environmental, and minimum standard. No slaughterhouse processing meat shall imply a health risk for those who consume it. I'm not saying that they have to have a size of plant. The only thing that I say that there cannot be a plant that processes meat if nobody consumes it. We have to work for more than 30% of discount. This is a serious problem. Brazil in September this year will receive the OMSA and will ask them to be declared foot and mouth disease free without vaccination. They need a scientific and a serious work that goes beyond the value of the vaccine. Value niches means adding value and then grading quality. This had to be audited by the most stringent audit. So the challenge is to transform. We are responsible for that. The government will support us, but we are the agents of change. God will, we are the ones that have to do the change.
Buonissimo, buonissimo. La matita buonissima. Bueno, ¿cómo les va? Es difícil seguir.
Hello. It is difficult to speak after Victor, but I'll try to make a nice presentation about a product that is becoming increasingly important in our country. I'm talking about pig. I also teach at the PhD course on nutrition, and students like how lean the pig meat is. So somebody who was clear about this some years ago, Vicencio, started with these cuts, and I think that is the trend. It's different with beef because housewives did not like beef bagged in this way. This is some information about pig production in our country. There is a large concentration of production. Basically, it's a central part in our country: Córdoba, Buenos Aires, Santa Fe, Entre Ríos, and Chaco. there is a projection that is growing continuously. As Victor said, exports have doubled this June as compared to June last year. There is a higher concentration in the production farms. Those that have more technology are also more efficient in terms of production. And this is the case of Buenos Aires, Chaco, and Córdoba. There is a very good big corn ratio. As Victor was talking about beef, here the most important calf steer ratio is important in beef. Here we have to consider the big corn ratio. We have cheap corn that helps a lot. Slaughtering is also growing. If we consider more than 10 years, we can see continuous growth. For obvious reasons, there is a high concentration of slaughterhouses in the central part of the country. This sometimes makes it difficult to find slaughterhouses in other provinces. And classifying the attributes requested by the demand. We have to be convinced that that demand is what prevails in the market. Supply will never be able to impose what the market wants. So if the case of beef, consumers want marbling in beef, and they want marbling to be measured. You may have heard about Kobe beef. It has 2 measurement rates. Well, this is what lean meat is here for. Apparent consumption is growing too, 17 kilos per inhabitant. When I graduated from university, chicken, and I even prepared some work on opportunities. I come from Goya, which used to be the capital of tobacco, and we were thinking how to replace black tobacco production. At the time, production of pig did not reach 18 kilos per capita, and I'm not that old. Consumption of chicken. You can see how chicken consumption has changed over time. Now, consumption 17 kilos per inhabitant a year, and the trend is positive. Just to see how the stock is distributed, pig stock, as you can see, is led by the province of Córdoba, followed by Buenos Aires, Santa Fe, Entre Rios, and Chaco. Chaco to much lesser extent. I will show this quickly because there is not too much time. Here you can see the comparison, the relationship between pig and corn. If we analyze this in general term, the average. Now, if we go to a hog that is not typified, now we are at a different level because the numerator is lower, so that takes the ratio down. What is the growth of pig slaughtering? 4%, 5%. We're talking about high technology farms with selected breeding, with the pigs brought from the Netherlands in many cases. The slaughterhouse copies at production. This is in thousands of tons. This is with bones, and it's good to see this. The growth And we're talking from 2011 onwards. This is 10 years, 57% of lean tissue. So a hog that weighs 110 kilos, through a sensor you can measure rib fat, and you can determine whether it's within the parameters, something that is more difficult in the case of beef. For example, the diameter of a certain cut would require doing an ultrasound, but at least you can have the parameters and select them. Per capita consumption, Victor has also mentioned the growth here, and we can see this line, except for 2020 when it goes down a little bit. We see continuous growth in pig meat consumption, so it's an important potential business. The relationship between the different types of cut. Brisket may be cheaper than a kilo of beef for barbecue. So consequently, we will buy more pig brisket. I think it's a very good cut for barbecue and a very good replacement for beef. Well, this really favors the pig sector. Same thing with pig and chicken. We can say that today, in the case of brisket, the average is 4,000 pesos. When chicken prices go up, or in the case of beef for barbecue, 7,000 or 8,000 pesos, makes this ratio even better. Victor has also mentioned this. This is a breakdown at the end of 2023. 40% chicken, 45% beef, and 15 pig. Today, pig and beef are at a tie. Nobody would ever have imagined that we would see this in Argentina. In fact, we never thought that Argentinian consumers would choose a product such as chicken. Beef exports. This is April this year compared to November 2023. You can see the growth, 1,758 tons. This is again beef with bone. The trend is good. In the case of the value of exports, right now, according to information in the media, the price for the ton of pig meat has grown quite a lot. This shows that this is really a good business. And where is pig meat heading concretely? Not surprisingly, even though there's some confidential data, but you know that here, Hong Kong is the entry to China. Many pig exports go this way, followed by Ivory Coast, and then China and the other countries. But again, you can see how important Asian countries are. In a university congress, I presented a study about attractive countries, and not surprisingly, we see Malaysia, all those countries which have the higher values per ton in the case of beef and pig meat. To conclude, we're not going to analyze the weaknesses of our sector that we could mention, but basically I will focus on the strength and opportunities in Argentina. Production quality. We have an excellent genetics here. We have excellent zoos. I've worked for companies outside Argentina, and you can see that human resources really stand out in Argentina. Experience and knowledge. We have already gone through that. Learning curve, internal consumption growth. These are all strengths. Which are the opportunities? Export markets. I agree fully with Victor. You cannot ban exports. There are no countries in the world that do not base their growth strategies on exports. Innovation and technology, high-level farms. This is why when the Chinese have their pig fever crisis, they started to fund farms in Argentina. Product diversification. Today we have a large portfolio of pig cuts that did not exist in the cut. You would go to a restaurant, you would never find some of these cuts that we're seeing today. And infrastructure improvements. This is something that the sector is continuously requesting, not only in terms of logistics, but also in terms of how to make exports more fluent, to reduce bureaucracy a lot, doing away with many requirements is a big step forward. So if you ask me, this is a great opportunity to bet on investments in PEG. Well, I hope we'll have some time for questions so that this will be a more dynamic meeting. Well, thank you, Rolando. We'll start with some questions to start this exchange with Rolando and Victor. Victor, can you share with us your point of view about how we're doing in terms of the different stages in livestock all the way up to the gate? Improvements, professional level, the gaps we have. I would say we're warming up the engines. We still have a long way to go, but we have already started. The engine has already been started. The car's moving. There is a new generation. Mine and the generation that followed mine was absorbed by agriculture. I'm talking about technical people. This new generation is now trying to get into livestock, to improve processes, to apply proven technology, to measure. And I would say that we still need a significant cultural change, which I think
goals against us. In any case, what comes is very, very important. The growth of beef demand is extraordinary globally. We are one of the few countries that have climate and geographical and genetic and human quality conditions to do that. The only limitation is ourselves. If you, young people, others not so young, but most of you are younger than me, if you don't take this challenge with the commitment needed, you will be frustrated. I won't see that. But that really would be a pity, would be a shame. It would be a crime. We have to duplicate our effort in the field, outside the farm rate, and abroad.